reportedly falling from the 22nd floor. Initial reports had said that the phone had been found away from the hotel, which added to speculation about whether he had taken his life or whether there was foul play. A group of South African police has yet to leave for Paris, but the Justice Minister says she has been approached for help. She's called a meeting to clarify issues surrounding the hold-up.
Yes, a major development, Vuyo. Just to be clear, I'm about 2 hours north of Paris, and I'll explain where I am in a moment. But the news from Paris is very important, and it's been disclosed to me within the last hour by the prosecutor's office, which has been overseeing the French investigation into Nathi Mthethwa's death. They say now categorically that French media reports a week ago, late Monday going into Tuesday, that the ambassador's phone, one of his 2 cell phones, had been recovered in the Bois de Boulogne, a pretty unsafe big wooded area in the centre of Paris. Very nice by day, but completely unsafe at night, and not a very salubrious location either. Those reports were wrong. It was also incorrectly reported by French media that police, because they had found that phone in the Bois de Boulogne, then started searching the Bois de Boulogne for the ambassador. They tell me this afternoon here that the only movement from the ambassador on Monday was when he departed the ambassador's residence in Paris and then made his way straight to the Hyatt Regency Hotel about 1 kilometre away from the residence. You can walk it in 25 minutes. I don't know how he got to the Hyatt Regency, whether he was driven there or indeed walked it himself. But police now say that was the only movement of the ambassador exactly 1 week ago. We know that it's almost precisely a week. It will be in 90 minutes' time that the ambassador last Monday left his residence in Paris, telling his wife that he was heading out to attend a cocktail reception. The next thing that we knew, of course, was that Philisiwe Buthelezi Mthethwa, the ambassador's now widow, raised the alarm later in the evening when he didn't come home. And now we know categorically that he went straight to the Hyatt Regency Hotel, where at some point, we don't know at what time, either late on Monday or in the early hours of Tuesday, he appears to have taken his own life. I got off the phone just a few minutes ago with Dr. Sfiso Buthelezi, the family's spokesman, broke the news to him that the police were now absolutely clear that both the ambassador's cell phones had been recovered at the Hyatt Regency, and he told me that he was in a meeting at the time, but he told me that he was going immediately to contact Mrs. Mthethwa to share that news with her, because it is an important aspect of the investigation. There were anxieties and concerns as to why that phone might have been found in the Bois de Boulogne. It is not the kind of place you want to go walking at night. And Mrs. Mthethwa last week was, I think it's fair to say, worried about those reports and uncertain where the phone had been recovered. They did not have, the family, as far as I'm aware, transparency from the police about it. They had had the phones returned to them along with the ambassador's belongings. They presumed that those phones had been found at the hotel, but when we discussed those reports in the French media that a phone had been found in the Bois de Boulogne, they also said they wanted to go and get clarity. So now we have that clarity. The ambassador's phones were with him at all times, and the only journey that he made last Monday was from his residence to the Hyatt Regency. So that is another pertinent fact in the investigation that the French authorities are conducting, and that will at some point be joined by the 5 senior investigators from the South African Police Service, who we were told, of course, on Friday were going to arrive here in France over the weekend. But in fact, they are still in South Africa, we have learnt today, trying to secure the appropriate paperwork from the French authorities to journey here. So that's the news of this hour, that we can rule out categorically any suggestion that the ambassador went anywhere near the Bois de Boulogne, that large wooded area, last Monday. Well, it does, and in an effort to try and continue probing the intrigue and mystery, Vuyo, I've travelled, as I said, a couple of hours north of Paris. I am in the Bois Delville. I'm at the South African memorial to fallen South African soldiers in World War I and World War II. More than 1,000 South African members of the armed forces who died in the two great wars are commemorated here. And the reason we've come here today is because Nathi Mthethwa himself came here 8 days ago. It was his last set-piece event as South African ambassador to France. And he came here to honour the 109th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme, that terrible World War I battle that played such a pivotal role and took so many Allied lives. I've actually just been into the nearby town where there is a separate war memorial from this South African memorial, and there I found the wreath that the ambassador himself laid in the town when he was here 8 days ago. I think we can bring you visuals of that wreath. It is still there at the foot of the war memorial in Longueval, which is the town very close to this wood that commemorates such a tremendous loss of life in World War I and more broadly in World War II, with all of the Commonwealth war grave cemeteries that are in this part of France. And what we have learnt in the last 24 hours is that while he was here, and we know that the ambassador was deeply touched by his visit here, I've never been here before, it is absolutely haunting to see the number of graves that are here, to walk through these woods and realise the sacrifice that South African troops and others made during World War I at the Battle of the Somme. He apparently, the ambassador, said to some of the veterans and South Africans that joined him on his visit here that he was very concerned that some of the troops who lie in these graves, their spirit was never fetched back home to South Africa by their families. And this follows reports that earlier in that week, Ambassador Mthethwa said that he had had some kind of a dream in which his deceased father had come to him and said it was time for him to come home. Now, the family is saying here that they believe that the way that he reacted to what he saw here in the Bois Delville is absolutely consistent with Zulu traditions. And it may begin to paint the picture, and this is speculation, but it may begin to paint the picture of someone who, in the final days of his life, was certainly thinking about death and its consequences. And interesting, of course, that we are waiting back in Paris for members of the family now to travel to the Hyatt Regency Hotel and themselves fetch the spirit of Nathi Mthethwa, so that his remains at some point in the next few days can be repatriated to South Africa for funeral services and memorial services. None of that solves the mystery, but it certainly explains more about what was going through his mind in the 2, 3 or 4 days prior to him checking into the Hyatt Regency Hotel from where he fell to his death either late on Monday a week ago or in the early hours of Tuesday. Well, they have not descended on Paris a few days ago. I mean, there's been confusion about it, I have to say. I was told by a government official over the weekend that they were already here. Now we discover that they are still in South Africa trying to resolve paperwork issues. I'm not sure what kind of paperwork issues those are. There's been a suggestion that it might relate to the fact that they need some sort of official stamp to act as law enforcement officers, police officers, investigators in France. But that has certainly delayed their arrival, and it is possible that that could further delay the repatriation of the ambassador's remains, because the Fetching the Spirit service ceremony needs to take place at the spot where he died. That is the inner courtyard of the Hyatt Regency Hotel. We were able to gather the first images of that inner courtyard at the Hyatt Regency, and we brought those to viewers this morning on Newsroom Africa. It's still sealed because it's subject to a police investigation, and it will undoubtedly be one of the sites that those 5 South African Police Service investigators want to visit. It is a critical location in the investigation. So whether the fetching the spirit ritual can take place while the inner courtyard is still sealed, I think is very much in doubt, because it is still an investigative scene. And so, you know, between that and we're not having any clarity yet about when the autopsy will be completed, when the family will gain access to the remains of Ambassador Mthethwa, bring them out of a government mortuary, put them into a private mortuary, you know, the timeline for his return to South Africa may end up being longer than the family was hoping. They were hoping very much to be able to bring him home over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 days. It may well be that it takes a little bit longer than that. Well, I think it's very unclear how that story was shared with French media. I mean, there's a newspaper here, Le Parisien, which was the first to report that, and then other newspapers picked it up. But whether they engaged in independent reporting to verify it or not, I am not sure. But Le Parisien was certainly quoting police sources to suggest that his phone had been found in the Bois de Boulogne. And, you know, that could have implications depending on exactly where it was found. As I've been reporting throughout the last week, it's a big area, the Bois de Boulogne, and the outer fringes of it is 3 minutes walk, 5 minutes walk from the Hyatt Regency Hotel. So if it had been found, you know, right on the edge of the Bois de Boulogne, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be a particularly big deal. But had, as Le Parisien was reporting, French police been searching the forest in the Bois de Boulogne, well, as I say, the Bois de Boulogne is not a safe location. There is a lot of criminal activity that takes place there at night. And so it did raise now completely unfounded questions that related to whether the ambassador had been present there. We now know those questions were completely unfounded. How and why Le Parisien reported that aspect of the story in the way in which they did, I am not clear. But I think it is interesting. I asked the French prosecutor's office today a series of questions. And the only one that they wanted to answer and clarify was the question about the location of the phone. So they definitely, within the French investigation, wanted to correct that record. And how that story was first reported, I simply don't have any visibility over that.
Thanks for watching.